Hello, and welcome to Grief and Hope Support Groups, where it's for grief, but about hope. My name is Angela Snowden, but I go by Angie. I am so happy that you are here today, and whether you are joining us in person or online, I'm glad that you have taken that first step to exchange your grief for hope. I developed this curriculum based on my personal experience, my education, and research. But I am not a licensed therapist. However, a licensed therapist who specializes in grief has endorsed the curriculum. I believe that this course can help anyone who is suffering from grief. But if you are having difficulty meeting your needs, going through your daily routines, or if you are considering self-harm or suicide, please see a professional therapist or call the suicide hotline. The number for the suicide hotline is 1-800-273-8255. Again, that number is 1-800-273-8255. And if you need help immediately, call 911 or go to your nearest emergency room. This course can be completed on its own, or you can do it when you are doing another support group or meeting with a therapist. And it does not matter what type of grief you are experiencing, whether you have experienced the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, or any other type of loss. If you have a loss that is causing you grief, you have found a safe place where you can learn to let go of that grief and find that hope that we all need. And if you're wondering if this course is right for you, you can find out more information at godsufficientgrace.com. There is a required workbook. It is Grief and Hope Workbook. It's for grief, but about hope. This is the only thing required for the course. There is another book, Grief and Hope, a true story of God's sufficient grace. You may find this encouraging for yourself or loved ones, but it is not required for the course. I also have a book, That Day Was Very Sad, a Grief and Hope book for children. In addition, I will provide video sessions that you can use at the beginning of each lesson. Again, this is an optional additional resource. The only thing that is required is this workbook. You can find it on Amazon, and the easiest way to locate it is to do a search for Angela Snowden. Your grief is yours and yours alone, because there is no one else in your shoes. But you are not alone. You are in a place where we can work together to move past the grief and grab a hold of that hope. First, I want you to know there is no right way to grieve. Our goal is to simply keep moving forward. You don't need to compare yourself to anyone else. It doesn't matter how long you have been grieving or what your grief looks like. Just make forward progress. If you're going through this course with a group, your group members are going to be a source of encouragement and accountability for you and you for them. Please put every effort into sharing and allowing others in. God created us for relationships, but if we're too busy putting up walls, it makes it hard to connect with one another. If you're doing this course online, you can do it alone if that works for you, but please consider doing it with a friend or a mentor or a pastor. And if you want to lead a Grief and Hope group, then you can contact me at God's Sufficient Grace for a free copy of the Grief and Hope Workbook. This first week is an introduction to the group and an introduction to me, a little bit about my story, and to the other group members. I may not have been through what you're going through, but I know grief. And if you're here, I know you do too. I want this to be about you, but so that you understand why I wrote the book and why I wrote this curriculum, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about my story. On June 4th, 2016, I experienced tragedy. My parents were taking my oldest daughter and my sister's oldest daughter on a high school graduation celebration trip to Branson, Missouri. The past few years had been very difficult for my parents with a lot of health problems, including my mom's fight with cancer. But they were feeling better and they had a wonderful time. I remember talking to my mom almost every day, and she told me about the wonderful time they were having on the trip. After the trip, they were supposed to meet us a couple hours south of my house in Kansas on their way back to Oklahoma. My husband and myself, along with my 2 younger children and my youngest niece, arrived. My mom and dad, my oldest daughter, and my sister's oldest daughter did not. We couldn't reach them by phone, so we headed in the direction that they were coming from. I was trying to be optimistic, but it still all felt wrong. They had never not checked in, and they were never late. We actually came upon the accident scene. There had been a head-on car crash, 4 people had died, and nobody that was left at the scene had any information about the 2 girls who had been individually life-flighted to a level 1 trauma center. My parents' vehicle was there. It was visibly burned. It was tarped, and my parents were still inside. It was a very hard day, but God was there. Fast forward a few days, where I am sitting in an ICU room listening to the machines that are monitoring my daughter's vitals, and I am watching every breath that she takes in and out from the ventilator. Just down the hall, in an almost identical room, is my niece. Even though I was still aching from losing both of my parents, I could not help but be thankful that my 17-year-old daughter and my 18-year-old niece had survived. Grief and hope, I thought. Those 2 feelings had never coexisted in me before then, and I realized I needed to grasp the only thing that was going to help me get through this horrific event. This is a true story of God's sufficient grace, I said to myself. Now those 2 phrases stuck out, grief and hope, a true story of God's sufficient grace. But I had no intention at the time of writing a book or developing curriculum. I just knew that I had a story, and now my story had a name. So, back to the workbook. In the workbook, I've got a little bit from my story on pages 15 through 17, but if you want to know more, you can get that regular book. But if you're in a group, for this first session, work through pages 13 through 19 together as a group during that first meeting. And then in sessions 2 through 8, try to work through each lesson prior to your time together. That will give you more time to discuss and to open up. But regardless of what you can do ahead of time, or regardless of how much you want to share with the group, because you're not required to share anything, please make every effort to attend all the sessions. The lessons are short, but they're designed to help you process your grief. Take the time to answer them thoughtfully. Healing occurs as you are going through that process. Whether you are working in a group or working on your own, I want to provide you with a place of encouragement and help. I have created a private Facebook group. It is called Grief and Hope Support Group, and it is part of the God Sufficient Grace Facebook page. Now, I want this to be private and only be for people who are completing the course. So whenever you are requesting to join, there will be a question that you can easily answer by having your workbook with you. There's no better way than to just jump in and get started. So you can dig into session 1, but first I want to leave you with a verse from Lamentations 3:20 through 24. I will never forget this awful time as I grieve over my loss. Yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning, and I say to myself, the Lord is my inheritance. Therefore, I will hope in him.